Ben, thank you for taking time for these office hours again, just
My
to
pleasure.
just to get started
Yep.
while we wait for some questions to come in. Um, I'll get us started. So, a little fun one for you. What are the biggest red flags you see in founders' pitches that founders may not realize that are red flags?
I think the biggest one is not putting a valuation, and I think some founders are getting coached not to put their
Mhm.
valuation. I don't know if it's like well, you go first, Mister Investor, Mrs. Investor. Like, kind of, it's if it's a negotiation strategy. For me, with me, it doesn't work because I'm going to say like, I asked in a pitch recently. I said, "What's your valuation?" And the founder said, "Well, I think that's between each individual founder and each individual investor." And I said, "I'm an individual investor and you're an individual founder. If you want me to have an investment conversation with you, what is your valuation?" I'm not trying to be a turd, but like, it's you have to say, like, you have to say your number. And that, honestly, if your number is completely overinflated, that's a signal to me. And if it's completely underinflated, that's a signal to me. You're like, you're pitching me. Like, I get to ask you what your number is. And if you're raising on a safe, all you have to do is have your valuation cap and a discount if applicable. I will not invest in an uncapped safe. So just say what your valuation cap is. But I think that's the biggest one in terms of the deck. Like, that's the biggest red flag that I still see. Second biggest red flag is no exit strategy. We've talked about the 8 core elements of the deck, and there's 9 now. Really, I am much more impressed with founders pitches who have considered what the acquisition looks like, or less likely the IPO. If you're trying to go the cash cow route, that's tough for an investor in the long term, because you have to have a very deliberate, very intentional strategy for distributions if you're going to make your investors happy with a cash cow. Like, just to be clear for anybody who's listening who doesn't understand the distinctions. But so acquisition is obviously you sell the company for a specified amount of money to a single party. IPO is you make the company, you take the company out for trade publicly, and it becomes publicly owned. And then cash cow is you just keep, like, netting the profit of the company forever. You don't get acquired by somebody else. And that's the trickiest one for investors, because investors have an obvious payday when you get acquired or you have an IPO. They don't get an obvious payday when you have a cash cow, unless it's written into some kind of legal agreement that you have with them, whether it's at the time of investment or afterwards. As an investor, if a founder said to me, we're going to go the cash cow route, I would say, all right, what are your distribution strategies? And if what's your distribution strategy? And if they said we don't have one, I would say, I don't want you to go. I don't want you to cash cow, because that means I just never get paid, and I put my money in, and you're keeping all of the money that would be coming to me forever. And if it got serious enough, like, I might consider what recourse I had. So exit strategy is very important, because it tells the investor, I'm thinking about how to get you your money back and how to help you make a return on your money. Um, the other thing that I think is a big red flag in the pitch is just the founder who's like grandstanding. And this is not just in the pitch, but I like founders who are present on socials, especially LinkedIn. I like founders who send out the investor relations newsletters. We also help founders do that, because I do think it's important. I think other investors value it as well. Communication, very important. But I also can spot the founders who seem more interested in posting on LinkedIn and talking about their rags to riches story and how they're sleeping on couches and, doing 996 and all that business, instead of actually building product. Um, there's a couple I can think of. And mostly those guys, those men, women, whatever, that those people, I don't want to invest in. So those are, I think, grandstanding, no exit strategy, and refusal to name a valuation. I think those are the 3 biggest ones.
Yeah, actually, on the exit strategy side, Like,
Yes.
would you want a founder to state that, directly during their main pitch, or save that for like auxiliary slides? So when that question does come up, they can quickly pull up a slide and kind of talk through the different options. Like, would you want them to have done research as to like who could potentially acquire them?
Yes, and I would put it in the structured presentation, just one slide,
Mhm.
and I start on AI. Do your research, which means go ask Claude at first, and you can do other stuff too. But like, you don't have to, you don't really have to. I don't expect something that's like peer reviewed and has statistically significant. We're more likely to be acquired by this one than that one, just to show that you're thinking about it and to say you can have a conversation with your favorite LLM to say, given what you know about our company, and obviously your LLM will almost certainly have some context on your company, because you've been talking, with your LLM about how you build and how you market and all of those things, and then it should have some context on your competitive landscape as well, because that is one of the other slides. The most likely targets for an acquisition, your most likely acquirers are a competitor, a customer, or a vendor, um, or potentially a company that invested in you, which is kind of a customer also. But those are the four horsemen of acquisition: investor, competitor, customer, vendor. And so if you just say, given who our target customers are, given who our competitors are, given who our vendors are, um, who's most likely to acquire us, and then break that out into just simple bullet points. Don't put a ton of text on the exit strategy slide. And then investors may ask you more questions about that and say, how did you do your thinking about this? And you can say, well, I started on Claude, and then we did some human evaluation of the options it presented. Don't just copy paste over from AI, but give some thought to it and say, okay, what makes sense? Do the human BS check that we always have to do with AI. And yeah, that's a great way of starting the process. And investors will be impressed, even if they disagree with your conclusions. They will be impressed that you're thinking about it.
Mhm. Thank you, Ben. I guess kind of, moving forward from that, let's say you like to pitch, you've decided, okay, you want to move forward with this founder,
Yeah.
and you're, going through due diligence. What are some things that, or maybe, that you've seen in the past that have made you turn away, from that deal during due diligence? Like any red flags that maybe spotted in their financials or.
So what I'll typically, honestly, it's if one of my friends tells me there's a problem, because I invest differently than I think most investors do. I know everybody says, "Oh, I'm different. I'm unique." But the way in which I'm different is that I'm not particularly good at like deep due diligence. I know that I'm not. I invest. I can look at the top line, 30,000 foot stuff, and I know whether it makes sense or not. Um,
uh, for those listening, Austin just commented, Ben actually deploys more money. That's why it's different.
no, actually deploys any money. I think he said
Oh
actually
yeah,
deploys
yeah,
money.
yeah. Deploys money. Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, Austin, you got me on that one. Oh, that one hit the funny bone. But so anyway, but I'm not very good. I know that I'm not very good at like the deep dive, go kind of crawl into the cave and like just dig into the numbers and all that stuff. I don't enjoy that stuff. And it's very important. I know that it's important, and I'm not that good at it. So what I do is most investors will hear the pitch, meet the founder, hear the pitch, do the due diligence, decide whether they're going to invest, and then they syndicate. I go in the other order. So I will typically, if I like the 30,000 foot view, I will syndicate very early. And my co-investors know that if I bring you a deal, it doesn't necessarily mean I've decided to invest yet. It means that I think that it is investment grade, so to speak, investment worthy, but I may or may not write a check. But I also am very careful about keeping track of what's in thesis for them. So just because I like a deal, doesn't mean like I'll carefully choose. All right, this makes sense for this one, makes sense for that one, makes sense for that one, and then I tend to piggyback to some degree off of their due diligence. Um, there are also times where I just like a founder so much that I'm like, I want to take a swing on you. and it's okay if you lose my money because I'm going to invest in your next thing too. Um, and then, but to some degree, it's like, all right, I'm going to take a swing on you, and I want to see if I'm right. I want to see how you handle adversity. I want to see how you handle it when things go wrong. I want to see how you handle the investors that I introduce you to. I want to like see all of that process, and if you prove me right, then you got a check waiting for every company you start in the future. But you can't be an ass, and you gotta be a 5C founder. You gotta prove yourself calm, capable, curious, coachable, committed. And if you keep doing those things right, then I'm not going to say you got a blank check, but you got an open checkbook for everything you do for the rest of your career. Um, those founders are pretty rare. But yeah, that's so. I think what I guess Anush, the original question was what pushes you away, and to come back to the answer on that, if one of my friends tells me there's a problem, then I'll look at things more closely. But most of the time, I just want to go meet more people, have more conversations, build network, and build the network of the people that I'm working with. Um, so, uh, so that's just what I like to spend my time doing. And so my due diligence process is pretty unusual. And it's not helpful necessarily to think of all investors as doing it this way because they don't. I'm pretty rare in this respect.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Ben. I believe Kevin does have a question. He raised his
Kevin,
hand.
you can go ahead and unmute and just ask. Okay, there we go. He put it in chat.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Oh, yeah. So does that usually mean, Ben, that you don't lead rounds? And the reason I say that is because usually you rely on the lead investor to do the due diligence and then piggyback off of that. Be like, hey, I believe that this VC does their due diligence. I'm willing now to bet on that VC's diligence to then go ahead.
Yes, that's right. I am usually not a lead in. Well, so it's funny because I'm not usually a lead investor in that sense, and and usually not in the financial sense. I usually write small checks early and potentially larger checks later. And I've written checks between 5K and 350K. A lot of investors do not like to talk about check size. I don't mind. I'm certainly not as big a checkbook as some, and maybe a little bit bigger than others. I'm typically toward the smaller end of that range, but my check size varies quite a bit. But where I do like to kind of take the lead is in promoting the deal. The nice thing about being an investor and not a founder is that I can talk all I want about the deal. Investors, come take a look at this, and it doesn't violate any SEC regulations. Like I can just say I'm investing in this deal. I like this deal. Come talk to this founder, and I can say whatever I want. I'm just an investor. I'm just an investor who said I did this. You should take a look. Founders have to be careful how they promote the deal and solicit investment. And so that in that sense, I like to be a lead investor in terms of pushing the deal out to the investor community. So did I answer your question, Kevin?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Wesley has a question.
Yes.
I believe that is Wesley, or maybe no, never mind. Oh, okay. It's a different name again this time. Confusing me, Wesley. So he's asking, I'm in my pre-seed phase. When looking for investors, what would be the best way for you to relationship build? I don't like just asking for money. I personally like to find mutual value. Does that matter?
Yes, it does matter. That is really good. And what I would do, and Austin has, I've heard this elsewhere, but Austin was the first one who kind of brought it into the founders group community. Ask for money, get advice. Ask for advice, get money. And so now, not investors are willing to engage in that way because they get hit up for stuff all the time, and I also get hit up for stuff all the time. But what I would say is, yeah, and I get it, and like to a degree, I understand that's what I'm signing up for. When I put on LinkedIn, hey, I'm an investor, like I understand founders are going to come find me. That's part of the gig. But I think the way to, so there's a couple of things you can do. You can doing the investor relations newsletters, and we can talk about good ways and bad ways to do those. Doing content on LinkedIn that speaks to investors is also important. And I think the best way to get an investor's attention is not by bragging about your metrics. I'll tell you guys a secret. The content that works on LinkedIn, at least in my experience, is all about the who, and it's all about the heart stories. It's all about the human interest stuff. If you talk about that stuff, you can slip in as many little as many little plugs and as many calls to action as you want at the very end of your post, and your audience will do all of the work for you. And why? Because that's the content that they really care about. They really don't care if your tech is 18% better than anything else out there on the market. I don't care. I care about whose life it impacted. I care about which employees you're taking care of. Like, so, like everybody's complaining about Elon Musk is a trillionaire. He doesn't care about anybody. That guy's created more millionaires and set more family legacies than 99.99% of Americans. And in taking SpaceX public and creating, I think, 4,000 millionaires in one day, like, I know that billionaires have this bad reputation, but if SpaceX wanted to tell those stories one by one by one by one by one, it would change the reputation of the company from a public facing perspective. Now, everybody's happy for SpaceX to go make them money now. Funny how things change when that happens. But I would say if you're telling the success stories of your customers, the success stories of your partners, the success stories of your employees, and the success stories of your co-founders, then investors pay attention to that. And that's a way of getting their attention. And then when you talk to investors, I think if you're reaching out directly to investors, I'm trying to think of the kind of thing that I would respond to. That's a good question, because outbound is always tricky. And I get a ton of like outbound outreach saying, "Hey, would love to share with you, what we're doing at, BSAI. Do you have 15 minutes? Just 15 minutes is all I ask." And you guys have heard me say this before. That's fine if it's one person, but if it's 1,000, no, I don't have 15 minutes. And so for each of those 1,000 people, what I can do is I can talk to people in a group like this kind of setting here, or if there's a way that I'm trying to think what the thing is. So what I typically suggest in outbound is that you send the person something that adds value for them and ask for nothing in return. Do that 3 times, and then you've earned the right to ask them a question. Still don't ask for the meeting. Send them some more value. Ask if they're following your stuff, and if they would like to. And I see Austin's note, and Anush, you can jump in on the end of it, and we can see if we can take the discussion in a new direction. But I would say you want to be able to add value for the investor, which is not an easy thing to do. It's kind of what gift do you buy for the person who already has maybe not everything, but has a lot of things. And so I think if you can do something for them that speaks to their thesis and shows that you're paying attention to what they care about, don't just send them the AI generated, "I thought what you said about XYZ was so compelling. Do you have 15 minutes for a call?" That's more BS outbound, and everybody's still trying to book on the first outbound meeting. I see stuff on outbound on LinkedIn all the time, and it's still, here's how you can get a successful first message. And what they mean is book a meeting off of a first message, to which I say, bring it on, suckers. Like, you are not going to send me a message that's going to get you a meeting with me on the first message. It is not going to happen. Unless you're an investor, or another ecosystem partner. As a founder, it is not happening. And I don't mean to be mean, but it's just that those are the numbers. So you got to figure out a way to add value for them. And if your value add shows that you're paying attention to the stuff that they're doing, like really paying attention, not like I had an AI scrape your profile. But if you can show that you're actually into what they care about, the game changes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And going back to what Austin said in the chat, said, I sent our one-liner to an angel on LinkedIn since his profile popped up. I respect him a lot for saying he doesn't know anything about the space, sorry, not the space, about space, so he can't even give feedback. His bio said to do so.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I think if you can, one thing that might work, and I'm just riffing here, but one thing that might work is to say, hey, you don't know me. I value your opinion as an investor. I've seen your content. And kind of do what Austin did. Basically say, here's our one-liner. If I were going to send this to another investor, is there a way you would suggest doing this for maximum impact? One other thing that I have done is if you have some kind of common ground with the investor, like founders from Rice University or Texas A&M University who reach out to me, usually I will give them time. And Anush, I'll let you jump in with Kevin's comment in a second. But usually I'll give those people time because we have something in common. We went to the same school. If they live in Central Texas, like typically Bryan College Station area is where I live, but those people, like I'll give them time as well. So if there is a way of finding common ground with the investor, then that's obviously helpful. But there's not always an easy way to do that. But harken back to ask for advice, get money, ask for money, get advice. And then see if you can make the advice very, very easy to give. So it's low time leverage for the investor. They'll remember that. Like I remember people who have sent me messages that were easy to reply to and that did not ask me to do a bunch of stuff. And it's not broad, vague questions about what are you seeing in the marketplace in terms of your thesis right now. I know they're just trying to start a conversation with me, and like there's no there. So I hope I'm not contradicting myself by giving that advice, but I think if it's very directed, very specific, shows you're paying attention to what I'm saying and not the obvious AI. I thought what you said about, crepe myrtles in the summer was so compelling. Like, no, you didn't. Your LLM did. So anyway, I think that's the best answer I can give off the cuff.
Yeah, and Austin, Kevin replied, saying that framing it something like kind of alongside with Ben, framing it something connectable. Like, did you reach out to them? Or when you reach out to them, you can say like, okay, like, did you reach out to them because you needed finance help? Do you need IP help, oversight, government contract help, et cetera, et cetera? So yeah, like.
Go ahead and finish, Anush, and then I just thought of something very important.
Oh no, go ahead. I was done, and I guess I ended weirdly because I saw your hand go up. Yeah.
Sorry. I cannot believe I forgot this, but this is so important. We talked, ask for money, get advice, ask for advice, get money. The thing that brings investors to the yard faster than anything else is saying, hey, are you interested in a potential advisory opportunity? Especially if there's equity attached. And as you bring in revenue, especially some investors don't care about this, but many do, myself included, especially if you are willing to pay a small retainer for the advisory help as well as equity, because then you are asking to give them money. And I know that, well, no, I want them to give me money. Of course you do. But the way that you get them to give you money is to build a relationship with them. And if you're willing to sweeten it just a little bit with, if you can afford the potential retainer, that's obviously after your post revenue. But it's amazing how little it takes to get their attention from these theoretically rich people. But and then offer some equity. Nothing makes an investor happier than to hear, for very low time leverage, I can juice my returns, I can increase the odds of an exit, and I can watch the founder before I decide to write a big check. What's better than that? Nothing. So reach out to an investor and say, hey, are you interested in potential advisory opportunities? Like that, if you say there's equity attached and potentially, in the right situation, there may be a retainer attached as well. I'd be shocked if you don't get replies to that. I'll reply to that. I will reply to that.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Ben. Margie has a question. Margie's asking, what is the most stereotyped belief about investors and VCs that is actually getting in the way of building relations with founders?
So you mean, just to clarify, Margie, you mean like a stereotyped belief that's actually incorrect a lot of the time, I guess? Or there are some stereotypes that are true. But yeah, I would say the most stereotyped belief about investors and and VCs that is often untrue and that gets in the way of relationship building is, I think it's probably something about how, I think that there's still sort of this proverb in angel investing and VC about how, and especially VC, about how the VCs are going to try to screw you in the end. And how, like, and that, there are still the clauses of death out there, 2.5x liquidation preference, full ratchet. Like, I wrote a Substack article on the VC clauses of death. And we can get anybody a link that wants to read it. But I would say, the yeah the being open to the discussion, and kind of, I think that the healthiest thing that a founder can do is assume the best about people and do your homework. If you see something that looks problematic, it may well be problematic. But that doesn't, it could be a boilerplate. Like, I almost always try to give people the benefit of the doubt, both as a founder, and I've failed many times as a founder, have had some success as a founder, and have failed as an investor too, and have had some success as an investor. But yeah, I would say it's the sort of, like, it's the kind of the adversarial, the for a long time there was very little information in like kind of in and around the market. Like, it wasn't, the world was not as connected. But now, with with LinkedIn becoming so ubiquitous, and everybody and AI being very helpful on this, there are just many more resources out there to say, hey, watch out for this, watch out for that. I think that there are still some founders who think, I have to watch out for VCs because they're going to try to hose me. Now, VCs answer to their LPs, so they do need to get a return. Angels are usually more patient. But and individual investors, family offices are kind of their own thing. I know everybody wants investment dollars from a family office. I understand. But they have different rules for how they want to play. But angels are usually fairly patient. VCs less so, because they have bosses, and who are their limited partners. So I think the biggest harmful stereotype is VCs are going to try to take all the money and they're going to try to hose you in the end. There are VCs out there that will do that, but there are fewer and fewer of them, and they are known for the most part now. Like, because as soon as a founder gets hosed, they're going to blast it all over LinkedIn, and they're going to say, don't do business with this VC because I got hosed. And everybody knows that. There's reputational risk now. So so that's so I would say, broadly, be trusting. Trust people and do your homework.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. Lee has a question.
Yes.
This is going back to when we were talking about advisors. What would be the ideal equity range and retainer for an advisor?
Yeah, it depends on what stage you are. What I would do. So, let's start by talking with everyone who's pre-revenue. Actually, no, let's go the other way. Let's talk post-revenue first. I think, if you are a seed stage company, I would say, probably 1,500 to 2,500 is about right. If you're Series A, I would say, something in the 2,500 to 5,000 range. And if you're Series B and beyond, I would say, like, probably 5 to 10,000 to do the thing that they do, provided you feel that, hey, Austin, that's amazing. But Austin is no longer pre-revenue. But it's by stage, basically. And again, the thing that they're doing needs to be adding value, and you need to have a, you know, a scope of work. A lot of founders want to tie it to weekly meetings, to which I say, absolutely not. I am not doing weekly meetings, and I don't. And I think that some investors are willing to do that and some are not. That you can ask for it. Your mileage may vary. So, and then the equity. So we're still talking post revenue here. So if you are, if you're post rev, I would say reasonable equity is probably for an advisor who's going to be very involved. And you can ask an LLM about this. So for me, I usually ask for a little bit more because I'm running an entire advisory firm. I've got a whole team that we're deploying on behalf of investor relations for the founder. So my numbers are usually going to be higher. But for seed stage, I would typically ask for probably between 2 and 4%, and maybe a little bit contingent on top of that. Most advisors are not going to ask for that, and individual advisors typically should not get that. But if they're running a team, that's a different thing. It's also pretty unusual. What I'm doing is pretty unusual, I think. So then, yeah, I would say typically anywhere between 0.5 and 2% would probably be what I'd ask for at seed stage. At Series A, for just an individual advisor. At Series A, I would ask for probably 0.25 to 1%, something like that. Series B and beyond, 0.5% or less. For an individual advisor. My numbers again are higher because I'm running a whole firm. We've got a team of 12 devoted to kind of the stuff that we do. Then if you are pre-revenue, I would expect, what I would do is I would offer a contingent retainer. Basically, when we get to this point, this is what we are willing to, what we're willing to pay. And some investors may say, I don't care about a retainer, because some of them don't. But you being willing to offer, I think, will still help, make a difference in terms of their response to you, even if they don't care about it. So then I would set up kind of a similar payment schedule to what we were talking about earlier. And I think we're recording this call, so you can go back and get the numbers. You can also ask an LLM about this. Like, it'll have a pretty good representation. Just make sure that you're distinguishing between whether the advisor is deploying a firm or whether they're just acting as an individual investor advisor, because the numbers do look pretty different based on that. And then so same thing for the equity. If you're pre-seed, I would talk to your LLM, make sure you're distinguishing between advisor or advisory firm, and then just ask what a reasonable range is based on a particular scope of work.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. Kevin has a question next.
Yes.
Is asking, why doesn't an investor schedule an update call after a no? Literally at 1:30, I have an Inside Ventures for an update, and their minimum check is 5 million. So we will be not in their range for a bit. So how to handle that call?
I mean, that sounds potentially very exciting. It means they want to put money in once you're in range. I think, if I'm understanding the context correctly, it means they would like to invest in you. And sometimes the investor, especially if they see a founder they really love, is willing to go outside their strike zone. Now, just kind of given what I'm aware of about this particular situation, I don't think they would go that far outside of their strike zone. But it means that they want to start. Man, that is the best news you can get, is when the investor is reaching out to you saying, hey, we'd like to be cultivating this relationship. How soon would we be able to write you a check? The question everyone wants, right? So what I would do is I would take the meeting, or I would have your investor relations team take the meeting. And typically, if you're early enough, it has to be you, the founder, on the call. Yeah, I guess I retract what I said just now. If you've got an investor first meeting and they want to talk about giving you, they want to talk about cutting you a check at some point in the future, you as the founder should be there. So you can also bring your investor relations team. But be careful about making the call too big, putting too many people on the call. But I would say, yeah, first meeting, you should be there. And anytime an investor reaches out, as long as, the thing you have to be careful of with investors and especially accelerators is the bait and switch where they're actually not trying to invest or bring you into, to their accelerator to add value. They just want to sell you something. There are a couple of accelerators out there that are notorious for this, and I'm not going to name any names because I'm not interested in a legal fight, but we can talk offline about who those are if anybody wants to know. So, yeah, that's my thought there. And then I saw there was a follow-up to that, Anush.
Yeah. At what point is it normal for the founder not to take these meetings?
What I would say is
a precursor, as in
yes.
the founder. It's not the founder taking these calls. It's like like we've appointed a CIO to do it. Is
Sure.
Is it ever like not like an insult to the to the investment group to be like, hey, sorry, I'm really busy building the business, and I know you're just checking in, so can I put somebody else on this so I can continue building? That's more the question.
Yeah, I think there's two factors. One is the relative profile of each party. Like if Andreessen Horowitz reaches out and says, hey, we're interested in writing a check, get on the call. I don't care what else is going on. Drop everything and get on the call. Or Sequoia or one of the majors reaches out, just figure it out. Figure out a way to be on. But if it's not that, like if the relative profiles are pretty even, or if it's an investor, if it's a smaller investor, you always want to be very respectful and deferential to investors. But I think it's acceptable to say that, based partly on relative profiles, and then partly on how serious you feel they are. Like if it's kind of like what you're talking about, Kevin, where it's just a check-in call. Like they're not getting ready to sign a check. They know it, you know it. Like I think the less close they are to writing a check, and then depending on the relative profiles, those are the two factors to consider. And always, I would say just keep your finger on the pulse with those situations. Just be very aware of how things are being received. I think it's good if you can talk to somebody voice to voice, and because everybody's better. In person is best, video conference is second best, on the phone is third best. Email or LinkedIn is probably right after that because they get to put your face next to it. Email is probably after that. Text is actually better than email most likely. And then I think email is probably the least personal, but you just want to make sure that you're not offending anybody. But I think those are the factors that I would consider.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. We still have 2 more minutes, or a minute actually, for questions.
Okay.
I don't see any in the chat. Ben, so just to kind of, end this off today, can you kind of tell us, the rest of the founders, a little bit about discounts? And what does that really mean? Having been both an investor as well as a founder, how does the discount affect like the different sides?
Hang on one second.
Maybe, yeah.
Okay. Discounts like you're talking about like on a safe note?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so a discount is less important than the valuation cap, right? The valuation cap is how an investor could really get like some serious juice out of that first check. Because if you have a reasonable valuation cap, and then the company just blows up, then yeah, the investor gets a significant return as you go to a priced round. A discount The normal discount is 20%. You'll see 15%, you'll see 25%. Like more than 25 is unusual, less than 15 is unusual. But 20% is kind of the accepted number. And excuse me, it's just a way of, of giving the investor, even if the valuation cap, even if they don't get a premium based on the valuation cap, once you move to a priced round, they still get priced in at a discount, so they get a bump on their investment check, and that's a way of offering them some IRR, even if there's no premium that they get from the cap, they still get some time value of money in that. So was there another question that you had on that, Anush?
No, I figured, people are probably wondering about discounts and stuff like that. So figured I would just ask and on behalf of the group. But I think we're at time right now, Ben?
Yes, we are. And I appreciate everybody's questions. I do actually, I have to jump. So anything else?
I think that is all. Thank you so much, Ben, for your time. And thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope to see you again next week, and have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, appreciate the questions.